Hey all, Bleak here, and guess what? Today, it's finding random treasures in a random forest day. And you know what? I think I might have just found something very, very valuable from the past. Let's take a look. I found Fling Smash. Physical games, aren't they amazing? You can hold them, open the cases, look at the cartridge. You know, maybe I should have bought the console to actually play it on. When you buy a physical game, you get a lot of cool stuff right from the get-go. The first of which being the case. Sometimes. I know there's an entire argument to be made about old game boxes being hard to preserve, but back then I had the misfortune of not being alive, so I don't care. The case of a video game is like the thumbnail of a YouTube video. If it's not interesting, you're not gonna select it. The case of a video game is usually your first impression, the big wow factor. While the back of the case is usually reserved for more facts about the game. Looking at the case should make you at least a little certain of what your game might be. For example, a horror game on the PS4, a racing game on the GameCube, or a $60 port nobody asked for on Nintendo Switch. Depending on where you're from, the box art might even be different. In the US, for example, Professor Layton and the Curious Village has covers that highlight the story, while the European cover focuses more on the puzzles. And finally, you also have the spine. Something that either looks magnificent when put next to each other, or god-awful if you're a PS3 owner. Or, I guess, if you're importing games, since importing games can sometimes get you different box size, spine, or just an entirely different case. Looking inside the case, you'll usually find a disc or cartridge with the game. Next to that, you'll also find a manual. Now, why do you need a manual, you might ask? Back when everything was black and white, and Super Mario Bros. 1 released for the NES, there were a few problems. So, what now? Now, over time, people actually realized that pressing a button gave a reaction. But that didn't stop manuals from being amazing. Imagine this. You're on your way home from the game store. You sit in the car excited to play your new game. So, you open the case and browse through the manual to learn more about the adventure that's in store for you. It's a fun pastime to make your game experience that much more exciting. Now, when the 3DS released, Nintendo had the genius idea to save paper by making the manual digital. And everybody was happy because of it. Is this the end of the world? Well, no. But there's something about it that just makes me sad. When you used to open up a cartridge, you'd find so much cool stuff. And now, well, nothing. I get that manuals aren't really needed anymore, especially with the Switch just scrapping them all together. But I don't know, man. I miss them. But at least they can't take away the cartridge. Oh my fuck out in the box! Why does this exist? I mean, besides wasting plastic and making me cry in my sleep, there's really no reason for it to be a reoccurring thing. Is it to preserve? Well, no, because there's no game to preserve. Is it so that people can access your game? Well, also no, because they can just purchase the game through digital storefronts. At this point, code in the box must be the bare minimum. Like, at least there's nothing else they can take away. Right?
Introducing the massive and legendary cache, including all kinds of neat stuff like an art print, a spinner pin, and a steel case for the game.
Wait a minute. So, for some reason, some recent collector's editions decide it's a smart move to not actually include the game. But they do include a steel case. Why the fuck? Like, I'd assume if you buy a collector's edition, you're planning on getting the game as well, right? And if you think people would prefer buying it digitally, then why include a steel cover? Am I the only one who sees a problem here? Ever since digital stores came around, the way we purchase games have changed. It used to be so easy to just walk into a store, look at the cover of a game, think it looks cool, and go in completely blind. But in recent years, especially with how pricey games have gotten, it makes sense that people want to be absolutely sure of their purchase by reading a review online. And while they're at it, they might as well just buy the game digitally. You just have to click purchase and you can start playing immediately. Any second now. Almost there. I get that the point I'm making here is a bit exaggerated, especially with online stores also offering physical games and physical games themselves not being safe from updates. But you get the point I'm trying to make, right? Online purchasing has become much more popular compared to the past few years. And that's not really a problem. After all, it's just more options to buy a game with. right? Well, in recent years, physical games have gone from being the main way of purchasing games to something you'll find in an archaeology book. The good part is that digital stores make it much easier for indie developers who are unable to find a publisher for a physical release to still release their games for everyone to play. The bad part is that big companies realize how much cheaper it is to only sell their games digitally. Well, either that or they pull a Capcom. Capcom's physical releases are an absolute joke, especially when it comes to the Ace Attorney franchise. Phoenix Wright Trilogy and Ghost Trick were only physical in Japan, which is fair since that was also what they did during the 3DS era. The Great Ace Attorney and the Apollo Justice Trilogy were physically available in Japan and North America, which isn't fun, but like, it makes sense. All these games have English options, and Nintendo Switch is region-free. I can simply import them no problem. Besides, Europe has gotten the short end of the stick with physical releases a lot of the time. But then you have Ace Attorney Investigation, which does a business strategy that I like to call, we like to fuck with our customers. The Nintendo Switch version of Investigations is only physical in North America, which is fine. But the physical PS4 edition is exclusive to Europe. Why? Like, I'm glad Capcom realizes we Europeans still exist, but if you're gonna publish in Europe, why not release both versions in both places? Hell, it would have made more sense for them to only publish these in North America. I'm just so confused by it. Sure, having a case for your collection is a nice bonus, but that doesn't really matter to me if I want to choose a game, see it, open it up, and notice there's nothing inside. Like, you'd think the biggest point of selling physical media is to make sure you own the game forever, which is especially important when Ubisoft claims you should get used to not owning something forever. I mean, you're basically giving the digital equivalent of Shigeru Miyamoto breaking into my home to steal my copy of Mario 3D All-Stars, and that's never gonna happen. Now you might be asking, wait, what about all the indie companies you mentioned earlier? The ones that, you know, don't have the budget to release physical copies. Well, don't you worry, my little paisano. Luckily, recent publishers have come up to help out, like Fangamer. Hell, even Nintendo themselves started publishing physical versions of indie games during the Wii U era. You also have places like I Am a Bit, and especially the devil himself, Limited Run Games. I hate them! A company that creates physical versions of games that would otherwise never get the chance to be in a case. Sounds neat, right? And it is. On paper. See, the problem with Limited Run is that their slogan is a fucking lie. Physical forever? More like, physical for 2 weeks. Get it? God damn it, I just want Oxenfree. Limited Run only gives games, well, limited run. There's only a small time window in which you can actually buy the game. So, if you're for example like me and want a physical version of Persona 3, Persona 4, Yakuza on Switch, Castlevania Collection, Sam Max Season 1 and 2, or fucking Tetris! And if you don't know about limited run while wanting to get any of these games, and you look it up on eBay, you'll find a fun magic trick. See here, you see this wallet? Fuck, I wanted to get lunch. Another problem with Limited Run is that they can take forever to actually give you your games. I've heard people complaining that it took over a year for them to receive their copy, which is especially frustrating when the game is already available digitally for less. And once it arrives, you have a 40% chance of your physical case just being broken. So, is this a big deal? Kinda? Like, when you order a physical game, you kinda imagine the game to just be there as fast as possible. Like, I know the novelty is having these games physically, but if a remake of a game comes out and, like, exists for an entire year, you know that you kind of fucked up, right? By now, it's probably obvious that I don't like Limited Run. However, while I could complain on and on about the fact that it cost me $30 in shipping to send 2 Persona Switch games to me, let alone me being able to buy both for that price digitally when it's on sale, I just want to say that Limited Run isn't all bad. For starters, just like Fangamer, a place that actually sells physical titles forever, Limited Run actually does care about the games they are pumping out. Most multi-platform releases, for example, still come with an inside cover on the Switch, something most multi-platform games and even some Nintendo exclusives just don't do. And to top it all off, they give you all kinds of bonuses and a gosh darn manual. Most indie games with publishers like Limited Run do offer manuals again, which is pretty neat. They actually put passion into their projects, which makes the fact that they are only available for 2 weeks that much more frustrating. For most indies, there aren't many other options, and it's definitely better than nothing. But you can't look me in the eye and tell me Atlus and Konami didn't have the budget to release these by themselves. Like, come on. But enough about Limited Run. let's talk about why physical games can be really cool. For starters, take Professor Layton and Pandora's Box, or Diabolical Box if you're from the US of A. Also, yes, this is just an excuse for me to talk about Professor Layton. Play the games, please, I beg of you. One of the puzzles in the game is about a train ticket. Now, you could just decipher the answer using the ticket on screen, or you use the ticket that comes with the physical copy of the game. Another game that really makes use of physical copies is Metal Gear Solid 1, which, for example, hit a radio frequency you needed on the back of the box. A very clever puzzle which actually was just meant to be an anti-piracy measure, which became pretty useless now that both the internet and digital re-releases of this game exist. Games can do incredible things using physical media. It's like a small version of an ARG, but offline and preserved forever. At the end of the day, while physical games might be dying out, at least I'll get the reassurance that I can buy a game and put the disc in my console. Fuck's sake! Digital-only consoles. Because why not? At first glance, this doesn't seem too weird. You can still buy a disc drive separately, or just buy a version with the disc drive in the end. It's just a cheaper alternative for people who really want the console. And if you don't believe that lie, I'll shove another excuse down your throat. Back when the Xbox One launched, Microsoft came up with a genius idea. When you first insert a disc, you'll have to be online at all times in order to make sure the disc belonged to you. Long story short, they wanted to make sure you were not sharing your games because money. It got to the point where Sony literally made a video on how to share your games physically. Eventually, Microsoft backtracked on this idea like a pussy, but the overall concept, doesn't it sound awfully familiar? See, you don't really need a way to stop people from sharing physical games when there is no physical game to share in the first place. It essentially means that if someone else wants to buy a game, they'll have to get a new copy digitally, meaning more profit for Microsoft and Sony. Hell, even Nintendo is guilty of trying to shove physical games off to the side by doing small things like giving you extra gold points if you buy a game digitally compared to physically. Those gold points being used to buy another digital title. During the Switch One life cycle, I really, for some reason, like there have been a lot of developments during me writing this episode, and now gold points aren't a thing anymore. It's strange how much can happen in 1 month. Besides that, it's also much cheaper to publish games digitally, since they don't require companies to invest in making and shipping physical discs, as well as giving a margin of set profit to video game stores. Speaking of video game stores, in the US, you usually hear about places like GameStop, which apparently sell more Funko Pops and video games these days. But for a Belgian like me, where do we go? Well, instead of GameStop, you'll go to the almighty, the beautiful Bankruptcy! Game Mania used to be a video game store, and now it isn't. Until the time of writing, how do they keep doing this? Yeah, over here in Belgium, the only way to get new physical games is through online stores like Amazon and Bol.com, which kind of ruins the magic of going into a store and browsing through big games to find something you've never heard of. We still have toy stores that sell video games, albeit some of them also going into bankruptcy, but none that really focus on it. Hell, I went to the toy store in my town, and they only sold some Mario games and Fortnite for the Nintendo Switch. I asked them if they had Persona 5 Royal because it was such a huge release and they must have had it, and it was too niche for them. I know I'm sounding really bitchy about this, but I really just miss going to a game store and just browsing through everything. There was just something magical about it, and I don't think it will ever be as grand again. Like a few years ago, I went to Paris with some friends, and there I bought another Code R. I know it's weird, but just seeing a video game store out in the wild, it just made me want to enter. You know, the place with the fucking Eiffel Tower and La Joconde, and I go for the fucking video game store. And then I haven't even mentioned the main way how companies tried shoving physical games aside, which I'll tell ya, for 10 euros a month. Subscription services are probably the main reason why people prefer to play digital. And the reason why I only bring it up so late is that, well, it's genuinely a valid reason. Why pay for a physical game when you can already play it day one on Game Pass for, subscription? If you already own Game Pass, it's a no-brainer. Now, do I think the concept of Game Pass itself is good? Kinda? The problem is, are you really saving that much money by paying $10 a month? It's not for me. I prefer to just have games physically or just make sure to own it. Because if something goes off of Game Pass while you're playing it, haha, have fun! This isn't even something exclusive to games. Movies and TV shows have gone through this exact same problem, with Netflix and other streaming services taking the crown today. And while Game Pass or PlayStation Plus haven't really taken over gaming completely, I do wonder if physical games will ever make a comeback. I could go on a little bit more about subscription services, but overall, the concept of gaming subscriptions is kind of straying too far from the topic of the video I'm making. At the end of the day, I still enjoy playing games, whether it's physically or digitally. Damn it, Nintendo! Yeah, I made this video before that whole announcement. So, the Nintendo Switch 2 has had this genius idea of introducing game key cards. Essentially, what you have is a cartridge with a digital game on it. So, you put the cartridge in, wait for the game to download, and can play it. And you can only play it while the cartridge is inside. I am trying to make sense of this. Like, this is technically just code in a box, but you can resell the game because it's connected to the cartridge instead of an account. Which is, like, good, but it's not physical. I am so conflicted by this. You know, I wouldn't have this big of a problem with it if not like 70% of the announced games so far for the console are game key cards, even though they could very well fit on a normal card. I'm looking at you, Puyo Puyo Tetris 2. Yeah, I don't really know what to say about it. It's confusing me. And I get it, some games might be too big and wouldn't fit on an actual 64GB cartridge. I wanted to add this as a little addendum because originally when I first started editing this, the Switch 2 only recently came out and we weren't really sure what game key cards actually were. That being said, my original point stands. Just give me physical things. Thank you. Bye. Subscribe. Please tell Shigeru Miyamoto to leave my home.